I never thought I'd see the day when my own son would put his hands on me. But there I was, my back pressed against the living room wall, staring into Jordan's furious eyes, while 30 strangers trampled through the house I'd spent 15 years paying for. Please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what city you're watching from. The double shift at Valley General had drained me more than usual. 12 hours of helping patients, dealing with insurance paperwork, and covering for 2 nurses who'd called in sick. My scrubs still smelled like disinfectant when I pulled into my driveway at 9:47 p.m., looking forward to nothing more than a quiet dinner and maybe catching the late news. Instead, I found cars lined up and down Maple Street like it was some kind of block party. Music pounded from inside my house so loud I could feel it vibrating through my truck's windows. The front porch light I'd installed last month was flickering again, casting strange shadows across faces I didn't recognize, smoking cigarettes on my front steps. My key wouldn't turn in the lock. I tried it 3 times before realizing someone had engaged the deadbolt from inside. I knocked, then knocked harder when no one answered over the music. Finally, I had to ring my own doorbell like some kind of stranger. Camila opened the door wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled like she was heading to some fancy restaurant instead of destroying my living room. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disgust. "Oh, you're back early." She didn't move from the doorway, forcing me to squeeze past her into my own house. "Early?" I checked my watch. "It's almost 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night." The scene inside made my stomach drop. My coffee table had been shoved against the wall, now serving as a makeshift bar covered with liquor bottles I'd never seen before. Someone had moved my recliner to make room for what looked like a professional photography setup, lights, cameras, and a backdrop featuring my fireplace mantle. "What the hell is going on here, Camila?" She rolled her eyes like I was asking about the weather. "Content creation, John. You wouldn't understand. It's how people make money these days." A girl who couldn't have been older than 20 was posing in front of my bookshelf while her friend took pictures with an expensive camera. They'd rearranged Ellen's photo collection to make room for ring lights and extension cords snaking across the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself. "Content creation? In my house? Without asking me?" "I live here too," she snapped, finally showing some emotion. "Jordan and I both do. This is our home now." That word, "our," hit me like a physical blow. Our home. The house where I'd carried Ellen over the threshold 22 years ago. Where I'd taught Jordan to ride his bike in the garage. Where I'd sat up countless nights when he had the flu, when he was afraid of thunderstorms, when he needed help with homework. "Where's Jordan?" Camila pointed toward the kitchen with a manicured finger. "Making sure everyone has drinks. He's actually being helpful instead of complaining about everything." I pushed through the crowd of strangers, recognizing no one. These weren't Jordan's friends from high school or college. These were Camila's people, young, loud, and completely comfortable treating my house like their personal studio space. The kitchen was worse than the living room. Every cabinet door hung open, my counters covered with empty pizza boxes and plastic cups. Someone had spilled red wine on the tile backsplash Ellen had picked out during our last renovation. The smell of cigarettes mixed with cheap perfume and spilled alcohol. Jordan stood by the refrigerator, laughing at something a guy with face tattoos was saying. My son looked different somehow. Not just the new haircut or the expensive sneakers, but something in his posture, his expression, like he'd become someone I didn't recognize. "Jordan!" My voice came out sharper than I intended. He turned, and for just a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy who used to run to me when I got home from work. Then his face hardened. "Dad, you're back. What is this? What are all these people doing in my house?" The guy with tattoos snorted. "Your house? Dude, Jordan said this was his place." "It is his place," Jordan said quickly, not meeting my eyes. "We live here. Dad just helps with the mortgage sometimes." "Helps with the mortgage?" I'd been paying that mortgage alone for 15 years, working double shifts and skipping vacations so Jordan could have a stable home after his mother died. I'd refinanced twice to pay for his college, taken out a second loan when he couldn't find work after graduation. Jordan, we need to talk, privately. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of everyone. His voice carried a defiance I'd never heard before. We're all adults here. Fine. Then as an adult, you can explain why there are 30 people destroying my house without my permission on a Wednesday night when some of us have to work in the morning. Your house? Camila appeared beside Jordan, sliding her arm through his like she was claiming territory. That's funny, considering Jordan's name is on the deed, too. My blood went cold. No, it isn't. Check again, old man. She smiled with the kind of cruelty that comes easy to people who've never had to work for anything. Jordan's been contributing to this household for months now. He has just as much right to this space as you do. The lie was so bold, so outrageous, that for a moment I couldn't respond. Jordan's name wasn't on any deed. He'd never contributed a penny to the mortgage, utilities, or property taxes. He'd been unemployed for 8 months. Living in my basement and eating my food while Camila spent money on clothes and makeup and whatever scheme had brought all these people here tonight. That's not true, and you know it. Dad, don't embarrass yourself. Jordan's voice carried a warning I'd never heard directed at me before. Things have changed. Camila and I are building something here, something important. You need to either support us or get out of the way. Get out of the way? In my own house? It's not just your house anymore. The words exploded from him with startling violence. You act like you own everything, like you control everything. Well, guess what? I'm 29 years old, I'm married, and I don't need your permission anymore. The room had gone quiet. 30 strangers watching my son publicly humiliate me in my own kitchen. Someone's phone was recording, probably capturing this moment for whatever social media nightmare Camila had orchestrated. Jordan, you're being disrespectful. These people need to leave. Now. No. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath. You don't get to give orders anymore. This is Camila's big night, and you're not going to ruin it with your controlling bullshit. Controlling? The word came out as barely a whisper. Son, I've given you everything. After your mother died, I worked myself to the bone to keep this house, to keep you in school, to make sure you had stability and security. This isn't control, it's responsibility. Responsibility? Camila laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Is that what you call guilt-tripping someone into staying trapped in their childhood bedroom forever? I tried to step around them, to start asking people to leave, but Jordan moved to block me. For the first time in my life, I felt physically intimidated by my own son. He'd gotten bigger since the wedding, spending hours at the gym while I worked to support his lifestyle. Move, Jordan. Make me. The challenge hung in the air between us. Around us, conversations had stopped entirely. Someone's camera was definitely recording now, capturing the moment when everything I'd built with my son crumbled into nothing. I tried to push past him gently, the way I might move around a coworker in a crowded hospital corridor. But Jordan grabbed my shoulders and shoved me backward, hard enough that I stumbled against the wall, hard enough that my head hit the cabinet door with a hollow thud. Don't ruin my wife's party. The words hit harder than the physical impact. My wife's party? In my house? With my electricity, my water, my wireless internet? Using my kitchen, my furniture, my space that I'd worked 15 years to create and maintain. But none of that mattered to Jordan anymore. I could see it in his eyes. I'd become the enemy, the obstacle standing between him and whatever fantasy Camila had sold him about their future together. I looked around the kitchen one more time, at the wine stain on Ellen's backsplash, at the strangers using my coffee mugs and eating off my plates, at my son standing protectively in front of a woman who turned him against his own father in less than a year of marriage. I see. My voice came out calmer than I felt. I understand now. I walked out of my own kitchen, through my own living room, past the people taking pictures with my furniture and drinking from my bar. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody even looked sorry. I sat in my truck in my own driveway for 20 minutes, watching shadows move across the windows of the house I'd built into a home. Watching strangers celebrate something I didn't understand in the space where I'd once felt safe and loved. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. The hurt began crystallizing into something harder, sharper, something that felt dangerously close to purpose. Jordan thought he was an adult now. Camila thought she was smarter than the old man who'd been working and fighting and surviving long before either of them was born. Maybe it was time to show them what an actual adult looked like when they decided to stop playing games. I started my truck and drove to the 24-hour diner on Route 9, where I ordered coffee and began making a list of phone calls I'd need to make in the morning. The first one would be to my lawyer. The second would be to a private investigator I'd met during my divorce proceedings 15 years ago. Sometimes being a father means protecting your child from the world, but sometimes it means protecting them from themselves. And sometimes it means teaching them lessons they'll never forget. The next morning, I discovered that my house had become something I no longer recognized. What I'd witnessed the night before wasn't just a party, it was a takeover. I'd spent the night at the Hampton Inn near the hospital, paying $89 for a room in a building I passed every day going to work. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was homeless while strangers slept in the house I'd been paying for since Jordan was 14 years old. When I pulled into my driveway at 7:30 a.m., 3 cars I didn't recognize were still parked on my street. My front door was propped open with one of Ellen's garden stones, and I could hear voices coming from inside. The smell hit me before I saw the damage. Stale cigarettes, spilled alcohol, and something that might have been vomit. The hardwood floors I'd spent 2 weeks refinishing last summer were scuffed and stained. Someone had ground a cigarette butt into the area rug Ellen had bought during our anniversary trip to Colorado. But the real shock was seeing people I didn't know eating breakfast at my kitchen table like they lived there. "Morning, Mr. Johnson," said a girl who couldn't have been older than 22, looking up from a bowl of my cereal. "Thanks for letting us crash here last night." Mr. Johnson. Not even my real name. I stared at her, then at the 2 guys sprawled on my living room couch, one of them wearing my Michigan State sweatshirt, the one Jordan had given me for Father's Day 3 years ago. "Excuse me, but who are you?" "I'm Brianna," she said cheerfully, like we were old friends. "Camila said it was cool if we stayed over. Your daughter-in-law is amazing, by the way. She's really building something special here." My daughter-in-law? The girl didn't even know our relationship, but she felt comfortable enough to raid my refrigerator and sleep on my furniture. Where are Jordan and Camila? Still asleep, I think. They were up pretty late editing content from last night. Did you see how many views the live stream got? Over 3,000 people watched Camila's house tour. House tour of my house. I felt something cold settled in my stomach. What house tour? Brianna pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like Instagram stories. Here, look, she showed off the whole place. The kitchen renovation, the master bedroom, that cute reading nook upstairs. People are obsessed with her aesthetic. She held the phone toward me, and I saw my own living room on the screen, but narrated by Camila's voice. "Welcome to our family home. Jordan and I have been working so hard to make this space perfect for entertaining and content creation." Our family home. Jordan and I. Not a word about the man who'd actually paid for every square foot, every piece of furniture, every renovation she was claiming credit for. How many people saw this? The full tour got like 15,000 views overnight, plus all the individual posts from last night's party. Camila's really blowing up. Brands are starting to notice her. I watched in growing horror as Camila gave a detailed tour of my house, pointing out features and design choices as if she'd made them herself. She showed off the master bedroom, my bedroom, talking about the calming neutral palette and custom built-ins that had actually been Ellen's idea and my craftsmanship. But the worst moment was when she opened the door to what used to be Ellen's sewing room, the space I'd preserved exactly as my wife had left it when cancer took her 5 years ago. "And this is going to be our future nursery," Camila announced to her phone camera. "We're thinking soft pastels, maybe a nice crib by the window. Jordan's so excited to start our family in this beautiful space." The sewing room, Ellen's sacred space, with her fabric collection and vintage singer machine and the rocking chair where she'd nursed Jordan as a baby. Camila was planning to erase every trace of my wife to make room for her own fantasy future. I handed the phone back to Brianna, not trusting myself to speak. The girl seemed to sense something was wrong because her cheerful demeanor faltered slightly. "Is everything okay? Mr. Johnson?" "It's Hayes," I said quietly. "My name is John Hayes. This is my house, and you need to leave." Her eyes widened. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Camila said, she said this was her place, that you were just what? She said you were Jordan's dad, but that you were kind of like staying here temporarily, like you were between apartments or something." Between apartments, temporarily staying in the house I'd owned for 15 years. I felt something snap inside my chest. "Get your things and go, all of you." Brianna scrambled to gather her belongings, clearly mortified. The two guys on my couch moved with less urgency, but they did move. Within 10 minutes, my house was empty of strangers. But the damage was done. As I walked through each room, I found evidence of how completely my space had been violated. Someone had used my master bathroom and left wet towels on Ellen's antique vanity. My home office had been turned into a charging station for phones and camera equipment. Empty bottles and food containers littered every surface. In Jordan's old bedroom, the basement space he'd moved back into after college, I found stacks of ring lights, camera tripods, and professional photography equipment worth thousands of dollars. Equipment that definitely hadn't been purchased with unemployment benefits. I was examining a camera lens that probably cost more than my monthly salary when I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. "Dad?" Jordan's voice carried a note of uncertainty. "What are you doing down here?" He appeared at the bottom of the steps wearing pajama pants and no shirt, his hair messy from sleep. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings before everything got complicated. "I'm trying to understand how my unemployed son afforded professional photography equipment that costs more than most people's cars." Jordan's face flushed. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me." "Camila has business connections. People invest in content creators who show potential. This equipment is on loan while we build our brand." "Our brand? What brand, Jordan?" "Lifestyle content. Home design, relationship goals, family planning. Camila has a real vision for what we can build together." I picked up a camera that looked like it belonged in a professional studio. "And this vision requires you to lie about who owns this house?" "We never lied. I just watched a video where your wife claims this is your family home, where she talks about decorating choices she never made and planning a nursery in your mother's sewing room." Jordan's face went defensive. "Mom's been gone for 5 years, Dad. You can't keep that room like a shrine forever." The words hit me like a physical blow. Ellen's room, the space where she'd created beautiful things with her hands, where I still sometimes sat when I missed her most, reduced to wasted space in Jordan's mind. "Your mother loved that room." "My mother's dead." The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. "Camila's alive. She's my wife, and she deserves to build a future without having to compete with a ghost." "A ghost?" I felt rage building in my chest, hot and dangerous. "Your mother isn't a ghost, Jordan. She's the reason you have a house to live in at all. She's the reason I worked myself half to death to keep you stable after she died. She's the reason I never remarried, never moved on, because I was too busy making sure you were okay. Nobody asked you to do that." The words hung in the air between us like a curse. Nobody asked you. 29 years of fatherhood, 5 years of single parenthood, 15 years of sacrifice, and my son was telling me it had all been unnecessary. I see. My voice came out calmer than I felt. So when you were 16 and needed surgery for your appendix, nobody asked me to work double shifts to pay for it. When you wanted to play baseball in high school, nobody asked me to buy equipment and pay league fees. When you needed a car for college, nobody asked me to co-sign the loan. That's different. How? That's what parents do. Exactly. It's what parents do. It's what I did because I love you, because I wanted you to have opportunities and stability and security. And now you're telling me nobody asked for it? Jordan looked away, unable to meet my eyes. You're twisting my words. Am I? Because it seems pretty clear. You don't want a father anymore, Jordan. You want a landlord you don't have to pay, a bank account you can access without permission, a storage unit for your childhood memories while you build your new life. That's not true. Then explain to me why your wife is telling the internet that this is her house. Explain why she's planning to turn your mother's room into a nursery without discussing it with the person who actually owns this place. Explain why I came home last night to find 30 strangers using my house like a movie set. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the old Jordan, the boy who used to apologize when he broke something or disappointed me. But then I heard Camila's voice calling from upstairs. "Babe, what's going on down there? We need to get ready for the brunch shoot." The flicker disappeared. Jordan's face hardened again, loyalty shifting back to the woman who'd spent less than a year in his life versus the man who'd spent 29 years building it. Camila's working, Dad. This content creation thing is real business with real potential. You wouldn't understand because you've never been an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur? I looked around the basement filled with equipment we couldn't afford and a house we weren't paying for, surrounded by the evidence of lies being told to strangers on the internet. Is that what we're calling it? Don't be condescending. I'm not being condescending, Jordan. I'm being realistic. You can't build a business on lies. You can't create content by claiming other people's property and achievements as your own. Nobody's claiming anything. I watched the video. Your wife gave a house tour where she claimed credit for renovations I did with my own hands. She talked about decorating choices your mother made. She presented this house as her own property while I was at work paying the mortgage. She never said it was her property. She called it your family home and talked about future plans like she had the right to make them. What do you think that communicates to 15,000 viewers? Jordan started up the stairs without answering, clearly done with the conversation. I followed him, knowing this wasn't finished, but understanding that pushing now would only drive him further away. In the kitchen, Camila was setting up another photo shoot, arranging fresh flowers and expensive-looking pastries on my dining room table. She'd changed clothes since yesterday, now wearing something that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. "Good morning, John," she said without looking up from her camera setup. "I hope you don't mind, but we're shooting a Mother's Day brunch feature today. The engagement on yesterday's content was incredible." Mother's Day content? In my house? Without asking permission? "We live here," she said simply, still adjusting her camera angle. "I don't need permission to create content in my own home." There it was again, her own home, said with such casual confidence that I almost questioned my own memory of buying this place, of spending 15 years making mortgage payments, of holding the deed in my own name. But I didn't question it. Instead, I watched my son's wife arrange my furniture for photographs she'd sell to strangers, planning a future in my space without my consent, treating me like an inconvenient roommate in the house I'd built into a home. And I began to plan exactly how I was going to teach both of them what ownership actually meant. The education was about to begin. The law office of Margaret Chen smeared like leather and old money, the kind of place where serious people made decisions that changed lives. I'd been sitting in the waiting room for 20 minutes, watching well-dressed clients come and go, wondering if I was making a mistake. But then I remembered Camila's voice on that video tour, claiming my house as her own, and my resolve hardened. "Mr. Hayes?"
A woman in her 50s appeared from behind mahogany doors, extending a firm handshake. "I'm Margaret Chen. Thank you for coming in on such short notice." Margaret's office overlooked downtown from the 15th floor,
with diplomas and awards covering one wall like a shrine to legal excellence. She gestured for me to sit in a chair that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "You mentioned on the phone that you're dealing with a property dispute involving family members?" I'd rehearsed this conversation during the drive over, but sitting there in that expensive office, the words felt clumsy and embarrassing. How do you explain that your own son has turned against you without sounding like a bitter old man? "My daughter-in-law is claiming ownership of my house on social media. She's using it for commercial purposes without my permission, and my son is supporting her." Margaret leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "Tell me about the property ownership. Is your son's name on the deed?" "No, I've owned the house outright for 15 years, paid off the mortgage last year." "Any written agreements about his residency? Lease agreements? Contracts?"
Anything that might give him legal claim to the property? Nothing. He moved back in after college, then brought his wife when they got married. I never charged rent because he's my son. Margaret made notes on a yellow legal pad. And the commercial use? I pulled out my phone and showed her Camila's Instagram account, scrolling through dozens of posts featuring my house. Margaret's eyebrows rose as she watched the house tour video, her expression growing more serious with each claim Camila made. "This is problematic," she said finally. "She's presenting herself as the homeowner to generate income through sponsored content. That's fraudulent misrepresentation at minimum. What can I do about it?" "Several things. First, we can send a cease and desist letter demanding she stop using your property for commercial purposes and correct any false claims about ownership. Second, we can pursue civil action for damages, any money she's made using your property without permission." I felt something loosen in my chest. So I'm not crazy. This is actually illegal. Absolutely illegal. Using someone else's property for commercial gain without permission is theft of services. Misrepresenting ownership for financial benefit is fraud. Margaret set down her pen and looked at me directly. "But I have to ask, are you prepared for the family consequences of taking legal action?" The question I'd been avoiding. Taking on Camila meant taking on Jordan, potentially losing my son forever. But then I thought about coming home to strangers in my house, about my son shoving me against the wall, about Ellen's sewing room being turned into a nursery for a woman who'd erased every trace of my wife's memory. My son made his choice when he pushed me in my own kitchen. I'm just protecting what's mine. Margaret nodded approvingly. Good, because if you're going to do this, you need to do it right. Half measures will only make things worse. She spent the next hour outlining a strategy that was both more comprehensive and more ruthless than I'd imagined. Legal action against Camila for fraudulent use of my property. Formal eviction proceedings against both of them. Documentation of all damages to pursue financial recovery. "I also recommend hiring a private investigator," Margaret said as our meeting wound down. "If your daughter-in-law is comfortable committing fraud this openly, there might be other issues we need to uncover." She handed me a business card for someone named Detective Ray Morrison, retired police officer turned private investigator. Ray specializes in financial fraud and social media crimes. If there's more to this story, he'll find it. I left Margaret's office feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: control. For the first time since Jordan brought Camila home, I wasn't just reacting to their chaos, I was planning their consequences. Detective Morrison's office was nothing like Margaret's polished space. Located above a Vietnamese restaurant in a strip mall, it smelled like pho and old coffee. Ray himself looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for retired cop. Gray mustache, suspicious eyes, and hands that had clearly seen some action. Social media fraud, huh? He studied the Instagram posts I'd printed out, occasionally grunting approval or shaking his head. This girl's got balls, I'll give her that. Using someone else's house to build her brand. My lawyer thinks there might be more to investigate. There always is with these influencer types. They live in a fantasy world where other people's rules don't apply. Ray pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. Tell me about the timeline. When did she start posting this content? I'd done my homework, screenshotting posts with dates and engagement numbers. Camila had been documenting her house for 3 months, posting everything from morning coffee routines in my kitchen to bedtime skincare routines in my master bathroom. What's her background? Job history, family, previous relationships? I don't know much. Jordan met her at some marketing event downtown. She claimed to work for a social media agency, but I've never seen evidence of actual employment. Ray made more notes. Social media agency, right. Half these girls claim to work in digital marketing when what they really do is post selfies and hope for the best. He looked up from his tablet. You want the full package? Background check, financial investigation, social media audit, the works? How much will that cost? $2,000 retainer, we'll see where it goes from there. But Mr. Hayes, let me be straight with you. If I find what I think I'm going to find, this is going to get ugly fast. What do you think you'll find? Ray leaned back in his chair, studying me over his reading glasses. I think your daughter-in-law is running a con, and your son is either a willing participant or a useful idiot. Either way, they've picked the wrong mark. I wrote the check that afternoon, understanding that I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But watching Camila arrange flowers in my dining room that morning, planning content shoots in my space without my permission, had crystallized something important. Being a good father didn't mean being a doormat. The investigation results came back faster than I'd expected. Ray called me at work 3 days later, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a man who'd proven his point. Your instincts were right, Mr. Hayes. Can you meet me at my office after your shift? You're going to want to see this in person. I drove straight from the hospital to Ray's office, my stomach tight with anticipation and dread. He'd spread documents across his desk like evidence in a murder trial, each page representing another piece of the puzzle I'd been too naive to see. Let's start with the basics, Ray said, settling into his chair. Camila Rodriguez, 25 years old, originally from Phoenix. No college degree, despite claiming otherwise on her social media profiles. He slid a background check across the desk. 3 previous addresses in the last 2 years, all shared living situations that ended badly. Phoenix, Denver, and 6 months in Boulder before she moved here. What do you mean, ended badly? Roommate disputes, unpaid rent, property damage. In Denver, she was living with a guy named Marcus Chen, 28 years old, works in tech. Sound familiar? The pattern was becoming clear, but Ray wasn't finished. Marcus's social media from last year shows the same thing. House tours of his place with Camila presenting herself as the homeowner. Lifestyle content featuring his furniture and space. Lasted about 8 months before he kicked her out. Ray pulled up Instagram posts on his tablet, screenshots he'd saved before Camila deleted them. Sure enough, there was my son's wife giving tours of another man's home, claiming the same design vision and lifestyle brand she was now selling using my property. Before Marcus, there was Tyler Williams in Phoenix. Same pattern. She moved in, started creating content using his place, built up a following, then things went south when he figured out what was happening. So this is her business model. More like her survival strategy. She finds guys with nice houses, moves in fast, uses their property to build her social media presence, then moves on when they catch wise. Ray flipped to another page. But here's where it gets interesting. The money. He showed me bank records that made my blood run cold. Camila had been earning significant income from sponsored posts featuring my house, kitchen appliance reviews, home decor partnerships, lifestyle brand collaborations. She's made over $15,000 in the last 3 months using your property for commercial content. Money that should legally be yours since she was using your space without permission. $15,000. While I worked double shifts at the hospital and worried about property taxes, Camila had been profiting from my house, my furniture, my 15 years of mortgage payments. There's more, Ray continued. The equipment in your basement, not on loan from investors, purchased with credit cards she opened using Jordan's social security number. He's on the hook for about $12,000 in debt he probably doesn't know about. The room felt like it was spinning. My son wasn't just being manipulated, he was being financially destroyed. Identity theft? Gray area. She probably convinced him to sign papers without reading them, claimed it was for business purposes. Technically legal if she had his permission, but morally bankrupt. Ray gathered the documents into neat piles, each stack representing another layer of deception. Mr. Hayes, your daughter-in-law isn't just using your house. She's running a sophisticated con operation, and your son is her current mark. I stared at the evidence spread across Ray's desk, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't just about disrespect or family dynamics anymore. This was about protecting Jordan from someone who was systematically destroying his financial future while he thought he was building a life with her. What do I do with this information? That depends. You want to save your son, or do you want to punish your daughter-in-law? I considered the question carefully. Both. Ray smiled, the expression of a man who enjoyed his work. Now we're talking. But timing is everything. We move too fast, she disappears and Jordan gets stuck with the debt. We move too slow, she drains him dry and moves on to the next mark. So what's the plan? We give her enough rope to hang herself. Let her organize another big event, something public and well documented. Then we spring the trap when she's committed to the lie and can't back out. I thought about Camila setting up photo shoots in my dining room, planning content in Ellen's sewing room, building her brand on the foundation of my life's work. How long do we wait? Not long. These types get greedy. She'll push too far soon enough, and when she does, we'll be ready. I left Ray's office with a folder full of evidence and a plan that felt both terrifying and necessary. For 3 months, I'd been the victim in this story. But armed with the truth about what Camila really was, I was about to become something much more dangerous. I was about to become the consequences she'd never faced before. The education was accelerating, and she had no idea what was coming. The text message came on a Tuesday morning while I was restocking supplies in the cardiac unit. Dad, Camila's planning something huge for this weekend. Big brand partnership, lots of people coming over. Don't plan anything, this could change everything for us. I stared at Jordan's message, feeling a familiar mix of hurt and anger. Don't plan anything. In my own house. As if I was a tenant who needed to schedule my life around my landlord's business meetings. But this time, the anger was tempered by anticipation. Ray Morrison had predicted this perfectly. Camila was getting greedy, planning something bigger and more public than her previous schemes. The rope was getting longer, and she was about to hang herself with it. I forwarded the message to both Margaret Chen and Ray, then typed back to Jordan, "What kind of partnership?" His response came immediately. Home and lifestyle brand wants to feature our house in a major campaign. Could lead to regular sponsorship deals. Camila's so excited. This is her big break. Our house. Still lying, even to me. But I played along. Sounds important. What do you need from me? Just stay out of the way Saturday afternoon. Maybe visit a friend or something. This needs to go perfectly. Stay out of the way? In my own house? The audacity was breathtaking, but it was also exactly what we needed. Camila was about to commit fraud on camera in front of witnesses with a major brand partnership at stake. When this blew up, it would be spectacular. I called Margaret immediately. It's happening this weekend. Big commercial shoot, brand partnership, probably multiple witnesses. Perfect timing. I'll have the cease and desist papers ready, along with the civil complaint. How do you want to handle the confrontation? I want to let her finish the shoot, get everything on camera, then present the evidence while her brand partners are still there. Maximum impact, maximum consequences. Risky strategy. You sure you want to humiliate her publicly? I thought about coming home to strangers in my house, about Jordan pushing me against the wall, about Camila claiming Ellen's sewing room for her future nursery. She humiliated me in my own kitchen. Turnabout is fair play. Margaret's voice carried a note of approval. I'll coordinate with the private investigator. This weekend could end everything. The next few days passed in a strange state of suspended reality. I went to work, came home, and watched Camila prepare for her big break like a patient observer studying a particularly interesting specimen. She brought in professional hair and makeup artists, spent hours arranging and rearranging furniture, and practiced her presentation to an empty camera. Jordan hovered around her constantly, playing assistant and cheerleader. "You're going to be amazing, babe. This is your moment." Watching them together, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me still saw the little boy who used to help me change oil in the garage, who'd brought me breakfast in bed on Father's Day, who'd cried in my arms when his mother died. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd chosen someone else's lies over his father's love. Friday evening, Camila cornered me in the kitchen while Jordan was out buying last-minute supplies for the shoot. "John, we need to talk about tomorrow." She'd never used my first name before, always addressing me with barely concealed disdain or not at all. This new approach felt calculated, like everything else about her. "What about tomorrow?" "This partnership is huge for us. Life-changing money, potential for ongoing sponsorship deals, real career opportunities." She leaned against my counter like she owned it. "I need you to understand how important this is. I understand it's important to you. It should be important to you too. Jordan and I succeed, we can start contributing to household expenses, maybe even help you with that mortgage payment." The offer was so insulting, I almost laughed. Help me with the mortgage on my own house, paid for with money she'd earned by fraudulently representing my property as her own. That's generous, Camila. I'm glad you see it that way, because I need you to be completely absent tomorrow, not just out of the way, gone. This brand wants authentic lifestyle content, and having Jordan's father hanging around would ruin the whole aesthetic. Jordan's father. Not his name, not my name, just an inconvenient relative who didn't fit her narrative. Where exactly should I go? I don't care. Visit friends, go to a movie, drive around. Just be gone from noon until at least 6 p.m. Can you do that for us? For us, as if this deception benefited anyone except her. Sure, Camila, I can do that for you. Her relief was visible. Great. And John, this really could change everything for our family. Jordan's so talented, and with the right platform, we could build something amazing together. Our family. Amazing. I nodded and smiled.
Playing the part of the cooperative father-in-law while planning her complete destruction. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Perfect weather for outdoor photography. I sat at my kitchen table drinking coffee and watching Camila transform my house into a movie set, bringing in additional lighting equipment, rearranging furniture, and setting up multiple camera angles. The brand representatives arrived at 11:30, two women in expensive suits carrying tablets and looking like they meant business. Camila greeted them at the door wearing what looked like a designer outfit, playing the part of successful homeowner and lifestyle influencer. "Welcome to our home," she said warmly, gesturing around my living room. "I'm so excited to show you what we've created here." Our home. What we've created. The lies rolled off her tongue like they were truth, spoken with such confidence that even I almost believed them for a moment. I gathered my jacket and keys, making a show of leaving as requested. "Have a great shoot," I called out, playing my part perfectly. But instead of driving away, I parked 3 blocks over and walked back through the neighbor's yard, positioning myself where I could see through my back windows without being seen. Ray Morrison was already in position across the street, documenting everything with professional photography equipment. For the next hour, I watched Camila give a performance that was both impressive and infuriating. She led the brand representatives through my house like a professional tour guide, explaining design choices and sharing stories about our renovation process. Every room became part of her narrative, every piece of furniture evidence of her taste and style. But the moment that truly broke my heart was when she opened the door to Ellen's sewing room.
And this is our nursery-to-be, she announced to the cameras. We're planning to start our family soon. And this space has such beautiful natural light. We're thinking soft colors, maybe some vintage pieces mixed with modern design. She sat in Ellen's rocking chair, the one where my wife had nursed Jordan 29 years ago, and talked about her future children like she had any right to that sacred space. That's when I knew the gloves were coming off. At exactly 2:15 p.m., I walked back to my front door and let myself in, like I lived there. Because I did. The brand representatives looked confused when I appeared in my own living room, clearly not expecting to encounter anyone else during their exclusive lifestyle shoot with homeowner Camila Rodriguez. "Oh," said the older woman, consulting her tablet. "Are you the neighbor? We weren't expecting any interruptions during filming." "Actually," I said, settling into my recliner, "I'm the homeowner. This is my house." The silence that followed was deafening. Camila's face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, panic, anger, and finally a desperate attempt at damage control. "John, what are you doing here? I asked you to." "To leave my own house so you could lie about owning it?" I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. "Please, continue. I'm curious to hear more about our renovation process and your design choices." The brand representatives exchanged glances, clearly sensing that something was very wrong with their perfect lifestyle shoot. "I'm sorry," said the younger woman, "but there seems to be some confusion about the property ownership." "No confusion at all," I said pleasantly. "I'm John Hayes, and I've owned this house for 15 years. Here's my deed, my property tax records, and my mortgage statements." I'd brought Margaret's folder with all the documentation, spreading it across my coffee table like a winning poker hand. "I'm also curious about the commercial licensing for this shoot. Did my daughter-in-law mention that she's been using my property for commercial purposes without permission for the past 3 months?" Camila tried to salvage the situation. "Ladies, this is just a family misunderstanding. John's confused about the legal arrangements." "What legal arrangements?" I interrupted. "Show them the lease agreement, Camila. Show them the contract that gives you the right to represent this property as your own." She couldn't because no such documents existed. "Or maybe," I continued, "you'd like to explain to these nice business women how you've been earning money by fraudulently representing my property as your own. I have documentation of over $15,000 in sponsored content featuring my house without my permission." The transformation in the room was immediate. The brand representatives went from confused to horrified to professionally distant in about 30 seconds. These were serious businesswomen who understood legal liability, and they just discovered they were about to enter into a partnership with someone committing fraud. "Ms. Rodriguez," said the older woman, already packing up her tablet, "we'll need to postpone this partnership pending clarification of the property ownership issues." "Wait, please," Camila begged, her carefully constructed persona crumbling. "This is just a misunderstanding. We can work this out." But they were already leaving, 2 professionals who wanted nothing to do with whatever mess they'd stumbled into. Jordan appeared from upstairs, drawn by the commotion. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" "Protecting my property from fraud," I said calmly. "Your wife has been earning money by claiming to own my house. That's illegal, Jordan." "That's not true." I showed him the Instagram posts, the bank records, the documentation Ray had compiled. $15,000, son. Earned by lying about ownership of my property. For the first time since he'd married Camila, Jordan looked truly uncertain. The evidence was overwhelming, and even his devotion to his wife couldn't overcome basic facts. "Camila?" His voice carried a note of confusion. "Is this true?" Her response was predictable. Attack mode, blame shifting, and emotional manipulation. "Your father is trying to destroy our relationship because he can't stand seeing us succeed. He's jealous and controlling, and he's sabotaging our big break."
But Jordan was looking at the bank records, seeing the money she'd hidden from him, understanding for the first time that his wife had been running a business using his father's property. "You made all this money and never told me?" "I was building our future," she snapped, dropping the sweet victim act. "Someone had to, since you're too weak to stand up to your father." The insult hit Jordan like a physical blow. After a year of defending her against every criticism, supporting her every decision, she just called him weak in front of his father. "Weak?" Jordan's voice was dangerously quiet. "I defended you. I chose you over my own father. I let you turn his house into your personal studio." "It's our house too," she insisted, but her confidence was cracking. "No," Jordan said slowly, looking around the living room with new eyes. "It's not. It's his house, and we're guests here. Guests who've been lying and stealing and treating him like garbage." I watched my son's face as the full scope of his wife's deception became clear. The commercial fraud, the hidden income, the identity theft Ray had uncovered, it all added up to a portrait of someone who'd been using him as thoroughly as she'd been using my property. "Jordan, baby, don't let him turn you against me," Camila pleaded, switching back to victim mode. "We're a team, remember? It's us against the world." "Us against the world?" Jordan looked at her with something approaching disgust. "Or just you against everyone who might figure out what you really are?" That's when I knew the spell was finally broken. My son was seeing his wife clearly for the first time, and what he saw made him sick. The education was nearly complete. All that remained was the final lesson about consequences. The silence in my living room felt like the moment before a bomb explodes. Jordan stood frozen between his father and his wife, holding evidence of financial fraud that painted their entire marriage in a horrifying new light. The education was carefully constructed, and I could see her calculating whether to fight or flee. She chose fight. "You want to know what's really going on here?" Camilla's voice shifted to something I'd never heard before, cold, calculating, vicious. "Your precious father has been trying to destroy our marriage since day one. This whole setup is just another way to control you." "Setup?" Jordan looked confused. "What setup?" I pulled out my phone and showed him Ray Morrison's investigation folder, the same evidence that had shocked me in that strip mall office. "Your wife has a history, Jordan. 3 previous relationships, same pattern each time." Camila's face went pale as I spread the documentation across my coffee table like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Marcus Chin in Denver, Tyler Williams in Phoenix. Before them, there was someone else in Tucson. Same pattern every time. She moves in fast, starts creating content using their property, builds her social media following, then disappears when they figure out what's happening. Jordan picked up the printed Instagram posts from Camila's previous relationships. Seeing the same house tours, the same lifestyle content, the same claims of ownership she'd been making about my property. These are the same posts you've been making here. Jordan, baby, that's different. Those relationships didn't mean anything. You're my husband. This is real." "Real?" Jordan's voice cracked like a teenager's. "Which part is real, Camila? The part where you told me you worked for a marketing agency? Or the part where you've been stealing from my father for 3 months? I'd never seen my son this angry, not even during his worst teenage years." His hands were shaking as he rifled through the evidence, seeing the scope of deception for the first time. "The credit cards," I said quietly, handing him another set of documents. "She opened accounts using your social security number. You're on the hook for about $12,000 in debt." Jordan stared at the credit applications, his signature forged on documents he'd never seen before. "You used my name without telling me? I needed startup capital for our business," Camila said defensively. "Couples share financial responsibilities. That's what marriage means." "Marriage?" Jordan laughed. "But it sounded like breaking glass." "What marriage? You mean the business partnership where I provide the mark and you provide the con?"
For the first time since I'd known her, Camilla looked genuinely frightened. Her usual weapons, manipulation, emotional blackmail, victimhood, weren't working. Jordan was seeing her clearly, and what he saw disgusted him. "That's not fair, Jordan. I love you." "You love what I give you access to." Jordan gestured around my living room, at the furniture she'd been using as props, at the space she'd claimed as her own. My father's house, my father's property, my credit score, my last name. When did you ever love me? The question hung in the air like an accusation. I wanted to comfort my son, to tell him it wasn't his fault, but this was a conversation he needed to have without my interference. Camilla tried one more manipulation tactic, tears appearing on cue. "How can you say that? We're married. We're building a life together."
Your father is poison, Jordan. He's trying to turn you against me because he can't stand that you chose someone else. Chose someone else? Jordan's voice carried a note of incredulous rage. I didn't choose you over him, Camilla. I chose the person I thought you were over the father who actually loved me. Turns out I was choosing a lie. That's when she snapped completely. Fine. Camilla's mask fell away entirely, revealing something ugly and desperate underneath. You want the truth? The truth is your father is a pathetic old man living in the past, and you're a weak loser who was never going to amount to anything without me. The words hit Jordan like physical blows, each insult landing with devastating precision. Your precious dead mother would be ashamed of what you've become. A 40-year-old failure living in daddy's basement, working dead-end jobs and dreaming about success you'll never achieve. I'm 29, Jordan said quietly. What? I'm 29 years old, not 40. You don't even know how old your own husband is. The detail was small but telling. After a year of marriage, Camilla didn't know basic facts about Jordan's life. She'd been so focused on what he could give her that she never bothered learning who he actually was. And another thing, Jordan continued, his voice growing stronger. I don't live in the basement by choice. I live there because my wife convinced me to give up my apartment so we could save money for our future. Except there is no future, is there? There's just your next mark, your next house to steal, your next man to drain dry. Camilla realized she'd gone too far, that her anger had revealed too much truth. She tried to backtrack, to return to the wounded victim persona that had worked so well before. Jordan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any of that. I'm just scared and confused, and your father is attacking our marriage. Stop, Jordan held up his hand like a traffic cop. Just stop talking. Every word that comes out of your mouth is another lie, and I'm done pretending otherwise. He turned to me, and for the first time in months, I saw my son instead of Camilla's puppet. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. The party, the disrespect, choosing her over you. You tried to warn me and I wouldn't listen. The apology I'd been hoping for, but it came with such pain attached that I almost wished he'd kept his pride intact. Jordan, you don't need to. Yes, I do. His voice cracked with emotion. I let her turn me against you. I pushed you in your own house, defended someone who was stealing from you, treated you like a stranger instead of the man who raised me alone after Mom died. Camilla made one final desperate play. Jordan, if you kick me out, I have nowhere to go. No job, no money, no family support. You'd be abandoning your wife when she needs you most. Abandoning? Jordan laughed bitterly. Like you abandoned Marcus Chen when you were done using his house? Like you abandoned Tyler Williams when he figured out your game? I'm not abandoning you, Camilla. I'm just refusing to be your next victim. That's when I knew it was time to deliver the final blow. Actually, I said, reaching for my phone, abandonment might not be her biggest concern right now. I dialed a number I'd memorized that morning. Detective Morrison, this is John Hayes. Yes, she's here. The evidence is ready and she just confessed to fraud in front of witnesses. Camilla's face went white. What evidence? What confession? I showed her my phone screen, which had been recording audio for the entire confrontation. The part where you admitted to using my house for commercial purposes without permission. The part where you acknowledged hiding income from your husband. The part where you confirmed opening credit accounts without proper authorization. You recorded me? Her voice was barely a whisper. I recorded a conversation in my own house where you confessed to crimes against my property and my son. Detective Morrison is on his way with the paperwork. Jordan looked between us, finally understanding the scope of what had been planned. You set this up, the whole weekend, the brand partnership, everything. I gave her enough rope to hang herself, I confirmed, though I didn't expect her to be quite so thorough about it. Camila tried to run then, heading for the front door like a cornered animal seeking escape, but Jordan blocked her path, his face hard with newfound resolve. Where are you going, wife? I thought we were building a life together. Get out of my way, Jordan. Our way, he corrected. This is our house, remember? Our life, our future, our business partnership. For a moment, I thought she might try to physically fight past him. But Camila was many things, manipulative, dishonest, calculating, but she wasn't stupid. She could see that her game was over, that every lie had been exposed, that every bridge had been burned. This isn't over, she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. I have rights. We're married. Rights? Jordan's laugh was completely without humor. You have the right to remain silent when Detective Morrison gets here. You have the right to an attorney when they charge you with fraud. You have the right to find somewhere else to live because you're not spending another night in my father's house. The sound of cars pulling into my driveway announced the arrival of the consequences Camila had been avoiding her entire adult life. Through my front window, I could see Detective Morrison climbing out of his sedan, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. Game over, I said quietly. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was home again. 6 months later, I stood in Ellen's sewing room, my wife's sacred space that Camila had tried to erase, watching my son carefully restore the vintage Singer sewing machine to working condition. His hands moved with the same precision I remembered from when he was 12, helping me fix the lawnmower or repair loose floorboards. The tension spring was completely shot, Jordan said, not looking up from his work. But I found replacement parts on eBay. Should sew like new when I'm finished. We'd been working together on weekends, slowly returning the house to what it had been before Camila's invasion. Not just cleaning up the physical damage, but reclaiming the space emotionally. Jordan had insisted on handling Ellen's room personally, saying he owed his mother that much after letting someone else plan to destroy her memory. She would have loved watching you fix that machine, I said, settling into the rocking chair where Ellen used to sit while working on quilts for Jordan's friends and teachers. I remember her using it when I was little, the sound of the motor, the way she'd hum while she worked. Jordan's voice carried the same grief I'd been carrying for 5 years, but also something new, peace. I'm sorry I let Camila talk about turning this into a nursery. That was unforgivable. The apology was unnecessary but appreciated. In the months since Camila's arrest, Jordan had been apologizing constantly. For the disrespect, the lies he'd believed, the way he'd chosen someone else's manipulation over his father's love. I'd finally had to ban the word sorry from his vocabulary, telling him that rebuilding trust required actions, not apologies. And the actions had been consistent. Jordan moved back into his childhood bedroom upstairs, leaving the basement space for storage. He found a job with a local contractor, using skills I taught him years ago that he'd forgotten during his marriage to someone who viewed manual labor as beneath them. Most importantly, he'd begun paying rent, not because I needed the money, but because he needed to contribute to something instead of just taking from it. The legal consequences for Camila had been severe and satisfying. Margaret Chin had been ruthless in pursuing fraud charges, documenting every instance of misrepresentation and theft. The district attorney's office had been particularly interested in the identity theft charges related to the credit card she'd opened using Jordan's information. Influencer fraud is becoming a real problem, Detective Morrison had explained during one of our court preparation meetings. Young people think they can build careers on lies and stolen property. Your case is going to send a message. The message had been clear and unforgiving. 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, full restitution for the money she'd earned fraudulently using my property, and a permanent ban on creating commercial content without full disclosure of property ownership. Her social media accounts had been suspended for fraud violations, destroying the platform she'd spent years building on the backs of other people's property. But the most satisfying consequence had been the complete public exposure of her operation. Ray Morrison had contacted her previous victims, Marcus Chen, Tyler Williams, and 2 others we'd discovered, and they'd all come forward with similar stories. The local news had picked up the story, running a feature about social media fraud that made Camila the poster child for influencer deception. "Local woman arrested for Instagram fraud," the headline had read, accompanied by screenshots of her fake house tours and a photo of her being led away in handcuffs. The story had gone viral, ensuring that anyone who Googled her name would find the truth about her criminal behavior. "Dad?" Jordan's voice brought me back to the present. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know? How did you figure out what she was really doing when I was completely blind to it?" I'd been expecting this question for months. Jordan had been processing his experience slowly, trying to understand how he'd been so thoroughly manipulated by someone he trusted completely. "Experience," I said simply. "I've been working with people for 30 years, son. You learn to recognize when someone's story doesn't add up." "But I lived with her. I should have seen the signs." Love makes us stupid sometimes. You wanted to believe in the person you thought she was, so you ignored evidence that contradicted that belief. Jordan secured the tension spring and tested the machine's striding mechanism. "The person I thought she was never existed, did she?" "No, but the person you are when you love someone, that's real. Your capacity for loyalty, for trust, for wanting to build something with another person. Those aren't weaknesses, Jordan. They're strengths that she exploited." "Then why do I feel so stupid?" I considered the question carefully. "Because being betrayed by someone you trust feels like a failure of judgment. But you didn't fail, son. You trusted someone who was committed to deceiving you. That's not stupidity, it's humanity." The sewing machine hummed to life when Jordan tested the motor, the familiar sound filling Ellen's room with warmth and purpose. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since before his wedding. "Mom would have been proud of you," he said quietly. "The way you handled everything with Camila. You could have destroyed me along with her, but you saved me instead. You're my son. Saving you wasn't a choice, it was an instinct. Even after I pushed you, even after I chose her over you, especially then, that's when you needed saving most." Jordan tested the machine's stitching on a scrap of fabric, producing neat, even lines that would have made Ellen proud. "What now, Dad? Where do we go from here?" It was a good question. For months, we'd been focused on legal proceedings and cleaning up the mess Camila had created. But now, with the house restored and our relationship rebuilt, the future stretched ahead like an open road. "I've been thinking about that," I said. "Remember how you used to help me with construction projects when you were in high school?" "Every weekend. I hated it at the time, but I learned a lot." "Well, I'm thinking about starting my own contracting business. Small residential projects, home renovations, the kind of work where craftsmanship matters more than speed." Jordan looked up from the sewing machine, interest sparking in his eyes. "You want a partner?" "I want my son. If he's interested in building something real instead of just taking from someone else's work." The offer hung between us like a bridge across the chasm that Camila's manipulation had created. Jordan had spent a year believing he could build a life on lies and shortcuts, learning the hard way that sustainable success required honest work in genuine relationships. "Hayes & Son Construction," Jordan suggested. "Has a nice ring to it."
We shook hands in Ellen's sewing room, surrounded by the memories of a woman who taught us both that love meant creating something beautiful and lasting, not just taking whatever was convenient. 6 months later, our business was thriving. Word had spread about the father and son team who did meticulous work at fair prices, who treated clients' homes with the same respect they'd want for their own property. We specialized in renovations that honored the original character of older homes while updating them for modern life. Our first major project had been the Hendersons' kitchen renovation, the same neighbors who'd watched police cars in my driveway during Camila's arrest. Mrs. Henderson had hired us specifically because she'd been impressed by how we'd handled our family crisis with dignity and determination. "I told my husband," she'd said while reviewing our proposal, "anyone who can survive what your family went through and come out stronger is someone I want working on my house." The irony wasn't lost on me. Camila had tried to build a career by stealing other people's property and claiming credit for work she'd never done. Jordan and I were building a business by doing actual work, creating real value, earning every dollar through honest labor. On a warm Saturday evening in September, I stood in my backyard grilling dinner for Jordan and his new girlfriend, Sarah, a nurse from Valley General who appreciated his work ethic and treated him like an equal partner rather than a useful tool. She'd been the one to suggest fixing Ellen's sewing machine, saying every family needed to honor the people who'd shaped them. "Your son talks about you constantly," Sarah had told me during their first dinner together. "Not many guys our age have that kind of respect for their fathers." "He went through a phase where he forgot," I'd replied, "but he remembered what matters." Jordan and Sarah were setting the table on my back deck, their conversation filled with laughter and easy affection. They were planning a camping trip to Glacier National Park, talking about the kind of simple adventures that people build real relationships around. "Dad," Jordan called out, "Sarah wants to know if you have any embarrassing stories about my childhood." "Just 30 years worth," I replied, flipping hamburgers on the grill, "but I'll save the best ones for her birthday." Sarah laughed, the sound mixing with the evening breeze and the distant noise of neighbors enjoying their own family dinners. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds, the background music of a life well lived. My phone buzzed with a text message from Margaret Chen. "Thought you'd want to know, Camila violated her probation terms. Back to jail for another 6 months. Some people never learn." I deleted the message without responding. Camila Rodriguez belonged to my past now, a lesson learned and filed away. My present was the smell of dinner cooking, the sound of my son's laughter, and the satisfaction of work well done. Justice had been served not through revenge or cruelty, but through consequences fairly applied and boundaries properly maintained. I'd protected my property, saved my son, and rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. The house felt like home again. Ellen's memory was secure in her restored sewing room. Jordan was building a life based on real accomplishments rather than stolen glory. And I'd learned that sometimes being a good father means being strong enough to let your child face the consequences of their choices, even when it breaks your heart. As the sun set over my backyard, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. Not the temporary quiet that comes from avoiding conflict, but the deep satisfaction that comes from facing problems head-on and emerging stronger. The education was complete. The student had learned his lesson, and the teacher had remembered that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. Some battles are worth fighting, not for the victory, but for what you protect by refusing to surrender. I'd protected my home, my son, and my wife's memory. In the end, that was enough. That was everything.